An ice shelf is a large permanent frozen water formation that hugs the edges of continents along the poles. Most ice shelves are found around Antarctica, but they also appear around the uppermost edges of North America and Europe, known as the Arctic Circle. Icebergs are large chunks of ice that have broken away from an ice shelf. Some ice shelf breakage, and resulting iceberg formation, is normal. And as long as an iceberg does not melt, but remains afloat, it does not contribute to sea level rise. Temperatures at the poles have been rising over the past 40 years, which coincides with man-made CO2 levels that were introduced at the start of the Industrial Revolution and have been increasing ever since, creating the conditions that have caused larger and larger chunks of ice breaking away from the world's once stable ice shelves at an alarming rate. Most of these permanent ice formations had been stable for thousands of years until now. Very large icebergs can impact sea levels when they melt because liquid water has about 9% more volume than ice. But icebergs can be an even worse contributing factor when they collapse, freeing up the glacial waters they once held back to flow into the sea freely.
Mid-July, 2017. A mega-sized iceberg broke away from the Antarctica Peninsula, on the Larsen ice shelf, located along its eastern coast. Two ancient chunks had already broken away in recent years. Back in 1995, we lost most of Larsen A, which had been stable for almost 5,000 years prior, and then in 2002 we lost even more of Larsen B, previously stable for at least 10,000 years. Both large areas of the once stable ice shelf went out to sea where they totally crumbled, and are completely melted into the ocean water today. Larsen C is the very large part of the ice shelf directly below where Larsen B was. Scientists first noticed small cracks in the area around 1960, but they had remained stable until the end of 2015.
At the beginning of 2016, a large crack in the Larsen C ice shelf began to rapidly spread and grow. As the size of the crack grew faster, it became evident to scientists that a very large chunk of the Larsen C shelf would soon break off, possibly giving birth to a mega-sized iceberg. And by mid-July 2017, an area of unprecedented size had broken away completely from the ice shelf as predicted, giving birth to a new supersized berg, called A68 by the U.S. National Ice Center. At its birth, the new iceberg was one of the largest ever recorded, weighing over 1 trillion tons. With about the same amount of water as Canada's Lake Ontario, and was 4 times the size of London. Just 2 days after the new iceberg formed, huge chunks of it had already started to crack, threatening to crumble and melt into the sea. Because of this, climate scientists now estimate that iceberg may have already began contributing to sea level rise. This satellite image of the actual area was taken immediately after the birth of iceberg A68 was detected. It shows the size, in area, of the iceberg at the time of complete separation from the Larsen C shelf. Within a few days, new images show that city-sized chunks had already begun to crumble away from the main iceberg. For instance, this satellite image taken within the first week of the birth of A68 shows that the entire eastern strip had already collapsed and melted into the sea by then.
While it was at first believed that the iceberg would have no immediate impact on sea level rise, because it was expected to remain intact and afloat for decades. Unusually warm conditions had already caused very large chunks of it to melt and crumble into the sea within a week of its birth. Furthermore, if the birth of the iceberg has created or exposed more cracks in the remainder of the ice shelf, the instability can unleash more tons of water from glaciers that were previously held back by the ice that has broken away, causing global sea levels to rise up to 4 inches or 10 centimeters worldwide.
At this point, it's too early to predict what the exact impact of this new iceberg will be on sea levels long term, but we're keeping a close watch. Stay tuned. For more, visit itsnotjustpolarbears.org.